First contact, on the distant planet of Zephyria, where the sky shimmered with hues of lavender and gold, life had always been peaceful and predictable. The Zephyrians, a race of tall, slender beings with iridescent skin and large, expressive eyes, had lived in harmony with their world for millennia. They prided themselves on their advanced technology, their deep connection to nature, and their strictly ordered society. Ava, a young Zephyrian scientist, stood at the edge of the crystal forest, her favorite spot for quiet contemplation. Her silvery hair fluttered in the gentle breeze as she gazed up at the stars, wondering about the vast universe beyond her home world. Little did she know that her life and the lives of all Zephyrians were about to change forever. The day the news broke, Ava was in her laboratory, analyzing the properties of a newly discovered mineral. The holoscreen on the wall suddenly lit up with an urgent message from the Planetary Council. Ava's heart raced as she listened to the announcement that would alter the course of Zephyrian history. Citizens of Zephyria, the council leader's voice resonated through the lab. Today marks a monumental occasion in our planet's history. After centuries of isolation, we have made contact with an alien species known as humans. Ava's eyes widened in disbelief. Alien contact had always been a subject of speculation and fantasy among her people, but now it was a reality. The council leader continued, "The humans come from a planet called Earth, located in a distant galaxy. They have expressed a desire for peaceful communication and cultural exchange. To facilitate this historic interaction, we are implementing an interspecies exchange program." Murmurs of excitement and apprehension filled the laboratory as Ava's colleagues gathered around the holoscreen. She felt a mix of curiosity and trepidation. What would these humans be like? How different were they from Zephyrians? Over the next few days, information about humans began to circulate throughout Zephyrian society. Ava immersed herself in the data, eager to learn about this new species. However, the more she discovered, the more her initial excitement gave way to concern. Humans, it seemed, were a paradox. They were described as a species capable of great kindness and creativity, but also of terrible violence and destruction. Their history was filled with wars and conflicts, concepts that were almost foreign to the peaceful Zephyrians. Physically, they were shorter and stockier than Zephyrians, with a wide range of skin colors and hair types. Their technology, while advanced, relied heavily on the exploitation of natural resources, a practice that horrified the environmentally conscious Zephyrians. One evening, as Ava sat in her living pod reviewing the latest information on humans, her communication device chimed. It was a message from the Planetary Council. With trembling hands, she opened it and read, "Citizen Ava, your exceptional academic record and your expertise in xenobiology have made you a prime candidate for the interspecies exchange program. You are hereby invited to participate in this groundbreaking initiative. Please report to the council chambers tomorrow at first light for further briefing." Ava's heart pounded in her chest. She had been chosen to meet the humans face to face. Part of her was thrilled at the opportunity to study an alien species firsthand, but another part was terrified. What if the humans were as brutal as some of the reports suggested? The next morning, Ava stood before the Planetary Council, her usually confident demeanor replaced by nervous anticipation. The council leader, a wise and respected Zephyrian named Zor, addressed her directly. "Ava, you have been chosen for a great honor and a great responsibility," Zor said, his voice calm and reassuring. "You will be among the first Zephyrians to live among the humans on their home planet, Earth. Your mission is to learn about their culture, share our knowledge, and pave the way for future cooperation between our species." Ava nodded, trying to hide her apprehension. "I understand, Council Leader. I will do my best to represent Zephyria and foster positive relations with the humans." Zor's expression softened. "We sense your fear, Ava. It is natural to be wary of the unknown. Remember, the humans have also expressed concerns about us. This exchange is an opportunity for both species to overcome their preconceptions and find common ground." As Ava left the council chambers, her mind was racing. She had just 2 weeks to prepare for her journey to Earth. 2 weeks to learn as much as she could about humans and their world. 2 weeks to come to terms with the fact that she would be living among a species that, by all accounts, seemed unpredictable and potentially dangerous. In the days that followed, Ava threw herself into her preparations. She studied Earth's languages, focusing on the most widely spoken one called English. She pored over information about human customs, social structures, and daily life. The more she learned, the more complex and contradictory humans seemed. One aspect of human society that particularly troubled Ava was their approach to mating and reproduction. Unlike the carefully regulated and genetically optimized process on Zephyria, human reproduction seemed chaotic and driven by emotion rather than logic. The concept of romantic love, while beautiful in theory, also seemed to be a source of great pain and conflict for many humans. As her departure date drew near, Ava's anxiety reached its peak. She confided in her closest friend, Lyra, during their last meeting in the Crystal Forest. "I'm scared, Lyra," Ava admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "What if the humans are as violent as their history suggests? What if they see me as a threat or a curiosity to be studied rather than a sentient being?" Lyra placed a comforting hand on Ava's shoulder. "You're one of the brightest minds on Zephyria, Ava. The Council chose you for a reason. Trust in your training, your intellect, and your empathy. Perhaps the humans will surprise you." Ava managed a weak smile. "I hope you're right. I just can't shake this feeling of dread, especially when I think about their mating practices. The idea of physical intimacy with a human, it's terrifying." Lyra chuckled softly. "Oh, Ava, you're getting ahead of yourself. You're going there as a scientist and a diplomat, not as a potential mate. Focus on your mission, and don't let your fears cloud your judgment." On the eve of her departure, Ava stood once again at the edge of the Crystal Forest. She took in the beauty of her home world, committing every detail to memory. The gentle rustle of the crystal leaves, the sweet scent of the bioluminescent flowers, the soothing hum of Zephyria's magnetic field, all of it might soon be replaced by the unfamiliar sights, sounds, and smells of Earth. As she watched the twin moons rise over the horizon, Ava made a silent promise to herself and to her people. She would approach this mission with an open mind and an open heart. She would strive to see beyond her fears and preconceptions, to discover the truth about humans, whatever that truth might be. The next morning, Ava boarded the interstellar vessel that would take her to Earth. As the ship lifted off, she caught a final glimpse of Zephyria's shimmering surface. A mixture of excitement and trepidation filled her as she realized that her greatest adventure was about to begin. Little did Ava know that her journey would not only change her perception of humans, but also challenge everything she thought she knew about her own species and herself. As the stars streaked by outside the ship's viewport, Ava closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Whatever awaited her on Earth, she was determined to face it with courage and curiosity. The first leg of Ava's journey passed in a blur of stars and swirling nebulae. She spent much of her time in the ship's virtual reality chamber, immersing herself in simulations of Earth environments to prepare for the sensory overload that awaited her. The gravity, the atmosphere, the intensity of Earth's sun, all would be new experiences for her Zephyrian physiology. As the ship approached the solar system, Ava's anxiety began to resurface. She found herself constantly checking and rechecking her research notes, trying to anticipate every possible scenario she might encounter on Earth. The human concepts of nation-states, diverse cultures, and conflicting ideologies were particularly challenging for her to grasp, coming from the unified and harmonious society of Zephyria. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, the blue and green orb of Earth appeared in the ship's view screen. Ava's breath caught in her throat as she beheld the planet that would be her home for the foreseeable future. It was beautiful, yes, but also intimidating in its alienness. As the ship began its descent through Earth's atmosphere, Ava steeled herself for what lay ahead. She was about to become one of the first Zephyrians to set foot on human soil, to breathe human air, to look into human eyes. The enormity of the moment was not lost on her. "Welcome to Earth, Ambassador Ava," the ship's AI announced as they touched down on a secluded landing pad. Local time is 14:30. Temperature is 22 degrees Celsius. Atmospheric composition is within acceptable parameters for Zephyrian physiology. Ava took a deep breath, adjusted her translator earpiece, and stepped towards the airlock. As the door hissed open, she was hit by a wave of unfamiliar sensations: the warmth of Earth's sun on her skin, the scent of vegetation so different from Zephyria's, the sound of Earth birds chirping in the distance. And there, waiting at the bottom of the ramp, was a small group of humans. Ava's heart for Zephyrians had too pounded as she took her first steps on Earth. She focused on maintaining her composure, remembering her diplomatic training. As she approached the human delegation, she raised her hand in the traditional Zephyrian greeting. "Greetings, people of Earth," she said, her translator converting her words to flawless English. "I am Ava of Zephyria. I come in peace and in the spirit of friendship." A tall human with dark skin and a warm smile stepped forward. "Welcome to Earth, Ava of Zephyria. I am Dr. Marcus Chen, head of the Earth-Zephyria Exchange Program. On behalf of humanity, we are honored to have you here." As Ava looked into Dr. Chen's eyes, she was struck by the depth of emotion she saw there. There was curiosity, yes, but also genuine warmth and excitement. It was a far cry from the cold, brutal gaze she had feared she might encounter. Over the next few hours, Ava was introduced to the rest of the human team and given a tour of the facility that would serve as her base of operations. Everyone she met seemed eager to make her feel welcome, peppering her with questions about Zephyria and sharing tidbits about Earth culture. By the time Ava retired to her quarters that evening, her head was spinning with new information and experiences. As she lay in her bed, staring up at the unfamiliar stars through her window, she reflected on her first day on Earth. The humans she had met were nothing like the brutal, unpredictable creatures she had feared. They were complex, yes, and different from Zephyrians in many ways, but they were also capable of great kindness and curiosity. Perhaps Ava thought as she drifted off to sleep, this exchange would be more enlightening than she had ever imagined. Little did she know that her greatest challenges and her greatest discoveries still lay ahead. The journey to understanding humanity and herself had only just begun. Preparation and departure. As the first rays of Earth's sun filtered through her window, Ava stirred from her sleep. For a moment, she was disoriented by the unfamiliar surroundings, the slightly higher gravity pulling at her body. Then the events of the previous day came flooding back. She was on Earth, the first step of her mission to understand humanity underway. Ava's first week on Earth was a whirlwind of briefings, medical examinations, and cultural orientation sessions. Dr. Chen and his team were determined to prepare her for integration into human society, a task that proved more complex than any of them had anticipated. One afternoon, as Ava sat in a classroom studying human social customs, she found herself struggling with the concept of personal space. "I don't understand," she said to her instructor, a kind-faced woman named Dr. Sarah Lee. "On Zephyria, we communicate through a combination of verbal and telepathic means. The idea of maintaining physical distance seems inefficient." Dr. Lee smiled patiently. "Humans value their personal space, Ava. It's a cultural norm that varies between different societies, but it's generally considered polite to maintain some distance unless invited to do otherwise. Think of it as a bubble of privacy that surrounds each individual." Ava nodded, trying to wrap her mind around the concept. It was just one of many human customs that seemed strange to her Zephyrian sensibilities. As the days passed, Ava found herself growing more comfortable with her human colleagues. She was particularly intrigued by a young researcher named Jack Thompson, whose enthusiasm for xenobiology matched her own. They often spent hours discussing the differences and similarities between their species, each fascinated by the other's perspective. One evening, as they shared a meal in the facility's cafeteria, Jack asked Ava a question that caught her off guard. "So, Ava," he said, his eyes twinkling with curiosity, "what do Zephyrians think about human mating practices? I bet they seem pretty weird to you, huh?" Ava felt her skin flush, the iridescent patterns on her face shifting in a way that would have clearly communicated embarrassment to another Zephyrian. To Jack, however, it just looked like a beautiful display of color. "Well," Ava began, choosing her words carefully, "Zephyrian reproduction is a highly regulated process. Genetic compatibility is carefully assessed, and emotional attachments are discouraged. The human concept of romantic love is fascinating to us, but also somewhat alarming in its intensity and unpredictability." Jack laughed, a sound that Ava had come to enjoy despite its initial strangeness. "Yeah, I guess love can be pretty scary sometimes, even for us humans, but it can also be the most beautiful thing in the universe." As Jack spoke about love and relationships, Ava found herself captivated. Despite her initial fears about human brutality, she was beginning to see a depth of emotion and connection in humans that both thrilled and terrified her. The next phase of Ava's preparation involved a series of field trips to various human settlements. Under the watchful eye of Dr. Chen and his team, Ava was introduced to the diversity of human cultures and environments. Her first visit to a major city left her overwhelmed. The towering skyscrapers, the constant noise, the sheer number of humans going about their daily lives. It was a far cry from the serene, ordered cities of Zephyria. Yet, amidst the chaos, Ava saw moments of beauty and kindness that touched her deeply. A street musician whose melodies brought tears to her eyes. A child offering a portion of his ice cream to a stray dog. An elderly couple holding hands as they walked through a park. "It's all so vibrant," Ava remarked to Dr. Chen as they watched the sunset from the observation deck of a skyscraper. "Chaotic, yes, but also full of life and passion." Dr. Chen nodded, a knowing smile on his face. "That's humanity for you, Ava. We're a mess of contradictions, capable of great cruelty, but also of incredible compassion and creativity. It's what makes us who we are." As her time at the exchange facility drew to a close, Ava felt a mix of excitement and apprehension about the next stage of her mission. She was to be placed with a human host family to experience everyday life on Earth firsthand. The night before her departure, Ava found herself unable to sleep. She wandered the facility's corridors, eventually making her way to the rooftop garden. To her surprise, she found Jack there, gazing up at the stars. "Couldn't sleep either, huh?" he said as she approached. Ava shook her head. "I'm nervous about tomorrow. Living with a human family, trying to blend in, it's daunting." Jack turned to face her, his expression serious. "You're going to do great, Ava. You've learned so much in such a short time. And remember, the family you're staying with has been specially chosen and prepared. They're just as excited to learn about you as you are to learn about them." Ava felt a warmth spread through her at Jack's words. "Thank you, Jack. Your friendship has meant a lot to me during my time here." For a moment, they stood in comfortable silence, looking up at the night sky. Then Jack spoke again, his voice soft. "You know, Ava, I've been thinking about what you said about Zephyrian views on emotional attachments." Ava turned to him curious. "Oh, yeah," Jack continued, a slight nervousness in his voice. "I was wondering, do you think Zephyrians might be missing out on something? By discouraging those kinds of connections, I mean." Ava considered his words carefully. I'm not sure," she admitted. "My time here has certainly made me question many things about our way of life. The intensity of human emotions, the connections you form, they're unlike anything I've experienced before." Jack took a step closer, and Ava felt her heart begin to race. "Maybe," he said softly, "you'll have a chance to experience some of those connections for yourself during your stay." Before Ava could respond, the door to the rooftop opened, and Dr. Chen stepped out. "Ah, there you are, Ava. I thought you might be having trouble sleeping. Big day tomorrow." The moment between Ava and Jack was broken, but something had shifted. As they said their goodnights and headed back to their rooms, Ava found her mind swirling with new thoughts and feelings. The next morning dawned bright and clear. Ava stood at the entrance of the facility, her few possessions packed in a small suitcase. The human clothes she wore still felt strange against her skin, but she had to admit they were more practical for blending in than her Zephyrian attire. Dr. Chen approached, a tablet in his hand. "All set, Ava. Remember, we'll be monitoring your progress, and you can contact us at any time if you need assistance. Your host family, the Johnsons, are good people. They're eager to welcome you into their home." Ava nodded, taking a deep breath to steady her nerves. "I'm ready, Dr. Chen, and thank you for everything." As she turned to leave, she saw Jack standing a short distance away. He gave her a warm smile and a thumbs up, a human gesture she had come to understand meant encouragement or approval. Ava felt a flutter in her heart as she returned the smile. The journey to her host family's home was a new adventure in itself. Ava marveled at the countryside passing by outside the car window, the diversity of Earth's ecosystems never ceasing to amaze her. Fields gave way to forests, then to suburbs, each landscaped, telling a story of human interaction with their environment. As they pulled up to a modest two-story house in a quiet neighborhood, Ava felt a renewed sense of purpose. This was why she had come to Earth, to understand humans in their natural habitat, to learn about their daily lives and customs firsthand. The front door opened and 3 figures stepped out, a man, a woman, and a young girl. The Johnsons, Ava's host family for the foreseeable future. They waved enthusiastically as Ava emerged from the car. Taking a deep breath, Ava walked towards them, a smile on her face. "Hello," she said, her translator perfectly rendering her greeting in English. "I'm Ava. Thank you for welcoming me into your home." Mrs. Johnson, a warm-faced woman with curly brown hair, stepped forward and, to Ava's surprise, enveloped her in a hug. "Welcome, Ava. We're so excited to have you here." The hug, an unfamiliar form of greeting to Ava, was at first shocking in its intimacy. But as she felt the warmth and genuine affection in the gesture, Ava found herself relaxing into it. Perhaps, she thought, there was something to this human custom after all. As Mr. Johnson helped with her luggage and their daughter, Emma, peppered her with questions about life on Zephyria, Ava felt a sense of optimism wash over her. Yes, there would be challenges ahead. Misunderstandings were inevitable, and the fear of the unknown still lingered in the back of her mind. But as she stepped into the Johnsons' home, surrounded by their eager smiles and genuine curiosity, Ava realized something important. In seeking to understand humanity, she had already begun to change. Her preconceptions were being challenged, her worldview expanding. The real journey, Ava knew, was just beginning. And for the first time since she'd learned of her mission, she found herself truly excited about what lay ahead. The universe, it seemed, had far more to teach her than she had ever imagined. As the door closed behind her, Ava took her first step into her new life among humans, ready to embrace whatever adventures and whatever revelations awaited her. Arrival on Earth. The first few days with the Johnson family were a whirlwind of new experiences for Ava. Every aspect of human daily life fascinated her, from the morning ritual of brewing coffee to the evening routine of watching television together. The Johnsons were patient and understanding, always ready to explain things that Ava found confusing or strange. Emma, the Johnsons' 12-year-old daughter, took it upon herself to be Ava's personal guide to human culture. She introduced Ava to popular music, showed her how to use social media, and even tried to teach her how to ride a bicycle, an adventure that ended with more than a few bumps and bruises for the Zephyrian visitor. "I don't understand," Ava said, rubbing her sore elbow after another failed attempt at cycling. "How do humans maintain balance on such an unstable mode of transportation?" Emma laughed, her eyes twinkling with amusement. It just takes practice, Ava. You'll get it eventually. Besides, falling is part of the fun. Ava raised an eyebrow, still skeptical of the idea that falling could be enjoyable. But she had to admit, there was something exhilarating about the moments when she did manage to stay upright, the wind rushing past her face as she pedaled down the street. As the days passed, Ava found herself growing more comfortable with human customs and interactions. She learned to interpret facial expressions and body language, skills that were crucial in a society that relied so heavily on non-verbal communication. She even started to appreciate the nuances of human humor, though some jokes still left her puzzled. One evening, as the family sat around the dinner table, Mr. Johnson asked Ava about Zephyrian cuisine. "So, Ava, what kind of food do you eat back home? I bet it's pretty different from our meat and potatoes, huh?" Ava nodded, her face lighting up at the chance to share her culture. "Oh yes, very different. Zephyrians are photosynthetic, you see. We absorb most of our nutrients directly from sunlight, though we do supplement with a nutrient-rich gel for additional minerals and vitamins." The Johnsons stared at her in amazement. "You mean you don't eat food?" Emma asked, her fork paused halfway to her mouth. "Not in the way you do," Ava explained. "Our digestive systems are quite different from yours. In fact, the process of eating as you know it would be quite uncomfortable for a Zephyrian." Mrs. Johnson chuckled, shaking her head in wonder. "Well, I guess that explains why you've been so polite about my cooking. Here I was worried you didn't like it." The family laughed, and Ava found herself joining in, touched by their easy acceptance of her alien nature. As comfortable as she was becoming with the Johnsons, Ava knew she couldn't stay in the protective bubble of their home forever. Part of her mission was to interact with a wider range of humans to understand the diversity of Earth's cultures and societies. Her first real test came when Emma invited her to attend a local high school fair. The prospect of being surrounded by so many unfamiliar humans was daunting, but Ava knew it was an opportunity she couldn't pass up. The fair was a sensory overload for Ava. The cacophony of sounds, the myriad of smells, the press of bodies, it was overwhelming at first. But as she walked through the crowd with Emma, she began to see the beauty in the chaos. At one booth, a group of students were demonstrating a science experiment, their eyes shining with excitement as they explained the principles of chemistry to younger children. At another, a talented young artist was creating portraits, her brush strokes bringing life to blank canvases in a way that left Ava breathless. As they passed the music stage, Ava stopped in her tracks, mesmerized by the sound. A young band was playing, their melodies weaving together in complex harmonies that stirred something deep within her. "What is this?" Ava asked Emma, her voice barely above a whisper. "Oh, that's the local jazz band," Emma replied. "Do you like it?" Ava nodded, unable to take her eyes off the musicians. "It's beautiful. We have music on Zephyria, but nothing like this. The way they improvise, the emotion in their playing, it's like they're having a conversation without words." Emma grinned, "Want to get closer?" Before Ava could respond, Emma had grabbed her hand and was pulling her towards the stage. As they reached the front of the crowd, Ava felt the music wash over her, the vibrations resonating through her body in a way she had never experienced before. For a moment, she forgot about her mission, forgot about the strangeness of Earth and its inhabitants. She was lost in the music, swaying gently to the rhythm along with the humans around her. In that moment, she felt a connection to humanity that went beyond words or rational thought. As the song ended and the crowd erupted in applause, Ava found herself clapping along, a broad smile on her face. She turned to Emma, her eyes shining. "Thank you for sharing this with me," she said. "I think I'm beginning to understand why humans value art and music so much." Emma beamed back at her. "Just wait until you try dancing." The rest of the fair passed in a blur of new experiences. Ava tried her first and last taste of cotton candy, marveled at the skill of the acrobats in the talent show, and even allowed herself to be talked into having her face painted with glittering stars. As they walked home that evening, Ava felt a profound sense of contentment. Yes, humans were different from Zephyrians in many ways. They were louder, more chaotic, more prone to extremes of emotion, but they were also capable of creating beauty and joy in ways she had never imagined. The next few weeks brought new challenges and discoveries. Ava attended classes at the local community college, participated in volunteer work at a nearby animal shelter, and even joined Mr. Johnson for a day at his office to observe human work habits. Each experience brought new insights, but also new questions. The complexity of human society, with its myriad of conflicting ideologies and belief systems, often left Ava feeling overwhelmed. How could a species so similar in their basic needs and desires have such vastly different views on how to live? One rainy afternoon, as Ava sat in the Johnsons' living room watching a news broadcast, she found herself growing increasingly distressed. The report detailed a conflict in a distant part of the world, showing images of destruction and suffering that shook her to her core. Mrs. Johnson, noticing Ava's distress, sat down beside her. "Heavy stuff, isn't it?" she said softly. Ava nodded, her eyes still fixed on the screen. "I don't understand," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "How can humans do such terrible things to each other? On Zephyria, the very idea of war is unthinkable." Mrs. Johnson sighed, her expression somber. "It's one of the great tragedies of our species, Ava. We're capable of so much love, so much creativity and kindness. But we're also capable of great cruelty when we let fear and hatred guide us." Ava turned to Mrs. Johnson, her eyes searching. "But how do you bear it? How do you find hope in the face of such darkness?" Mrs. Johnson smiled gently, taking Ava's hand in her own. "We bear it because we must. And we find hope in the good that people do every day, in the helpers who rush in when disaster strikes, in the peacemakers who work tirelessly to resolve conflicts, in the ordinary people who choose kindness over cruelty day after day." As Mrs. Johnson spoke, Ava felt a shift in her perspective. She had come to Earth expecting to find a species dominated by their baser instincts, prone to violence and brutality. Instead, she was discovering a race of beings who struggled daily with their own nature, who were capable of both great evil and tremendous good. "I think," Ava said slowly, "that I'm beginning to understand. Humans aren't inherently brutal or kind. You're complex, contradictory. Each of you contains the potential for both darkness and light." Mrs. Johnson nodded, squeezing Ava's hand. "That's right. And it's in that complexity, in our struggles and our triumphs, that our true strength lies." As the days turned into weeks, Ava found herself growing increasingly comfortable in her human life. She had made friends at the community college, developed a passion for earth music, particularly jazz, and even started to understand some of the more subtle aspects of human humor. But as much as she was enjoying her time on Earth, Ava couldn't shake the feeling that something was missing. She had come here to understand humanity, yes, but also to forge deeper connections, to experience the full range of human emotions and relationships. One evening, as she sat on the porch swing watching the sunset, Ava found her thoughts drifting back to the research facility, to the conversations with Jack. She wondered what he was doing, if he ever thought about her. The intensity of her feelings surprised her. Was this what humans called missing someone? As if summoned by her thoughts, Ava's communication device chimed with an incoming message. Her heart leaped when she saw it was from Jack. "Hey Ava," the message read. "Hope your Earth adventure is going well. The facility feels empty without you. Any chance you'd like to meet up sometime? There's a new exhibit at the Natural History Museum I think you'd love." Ava felt a rush of excitement as she read the message. Without hesitation, she typed out her reply. "Hello, Jack. I'd love to meet up. The museum sounds wonderful, and I've missed you too." As she hit send, Ava realized that her journey on Earth was far from over. She had learned so much about humanity, had begun to see past her initial fears and prejudices, but there was still so much more to discover, so many more connections to make. And perhaps she thought as she watched the last rays of sunlight paint the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, the most important discoveries were yet to come. Unexpected connections. The day of Ava's meeting with Jack dawned bright and clear. As she stood in front of the mirror, adjusting her human attire, she felt a flutter of nervousness in her stomach. It was a sensation she was becoming increasingly familiar with during her time on Earth, but never quite this intense. Mrs. Johnson noticed Ava's agitation as she came down for breakfast. "Big day today, huh?" she said with a knowing smile. "Meeting up with that friend from the research facility?" Ava nodded, her iridescent skin shimmering with a mix of excitement and anxiety. "Yes, we're going to the Natural History Museum. I'm looking forward to it." Mrs. Johnson's smile widened. "I'm sure you are. You know, Ava, it's okay to have feelings for someone, even if they're not Zephyrian." Ava felt her face flush, the patterns on her skin swirling in embarrassment. I don't know what you mean. Jack is just a friend, a colleague." "Aha," Mrs. Johnson said, her tone gently teasing. "Well, whatever he is, have fun today. And remember, be yourself. That's more than enough." As Ava made her way to the museum, her mind was a whirl of thoughts and emotions. She had come to Earth to study humans, to understand their ways. She hadn't expected to form such deep connections, to feel such intense emotions. It was thrilling and terrifying all at once. Jack was waiting for her at the museum entrance, his face lighting up as he saw her approach. "Ava, it's so good to see you," he said, pulling her into a quick hug. Ava felt her heart race at the contact. She was still getting used to the human custom of hugging, but she had to admit there was something comforting about it. "It's good to see you too, Jack," she replied, her voice warm. As they entered the museum, Jack couldn't stop asking about Ava's experiences with her host family. "So, what's it really like living with humans? Any major cultural shocks?" Ava laughed, recounting some of her more amusing misunderstandings. "Well, I did try to photosynthesize in the backyard one day. The neighbors were quite confused." Jack's laughter echoed through the museum halls, drawing curious glances from other visitors. Ava found she didn't mind the attention. There was something freeing about being here with Jack, away from the constant scrutiny of her mission. As they wandered through the exhibits, Ava was struck by the vastness of Earth's history. The fossils of long-extinct creatures, the artifacts of ancient civilizations, it all spoke to a planet with a rich and complex past. "It's amazing," Ava mused as they stood before a massive dinosaur skeleton. "On Zephyria, our ecosystem has been stable for millions of years. But Earth, it's constantly changing, evolving." Jack nodded, his eyes bright with enthusiasm. "That's what I love about studying Earth's history. It reminds us that change is the only constant. Who knows what our world will look like in another million years?" As they talked, Ava found herself drawing closer to Jack, their hands occasionally brushing as they walked. Each contact sent a jolt of electricity through her, a sensation both foreign and exhilarating. They paused in front of an exhibit on human evolution, tracing the path from early hominids to modern Homo sapiens. "You know," Jack said, his voice thoughtful, "sometimes I wonder if we're still evolving. Not just physically, but as a society. Learning to be better, kinder, more understanding." Ava turned to look at him, struck by the depth of his words. "I think you are," she said softly. "Every day I spend here, I see humans striving to be better, to overcome their baser instincts. It's inspiring." Their eyes met, and for a moment, the bustling museum seemed to fade away. Ava felt a surge of emotion so strong it almost overwhelmed her. Was this what humans called attraction, or was it something deeper? The moment was broken by the sound of Jack's stomach growling loudly. He laughed, a bit embarrassed. "Sorry about that. I guess all this walking around has made me hungry. Want to grab some lunch?" Ava nodded, grateful for the distraction from her swirling emotions. "That sounds good, though I'll just have some water. Human food still doesn't agree with me." They found a small cafe near the museum, settling into a cozy booth by the window. As Jack dug into his sandwich, Ava sipped her water, watching the people pass by outside. "Can I ask you something, Ava?" Jack said between bites. "What do you really think about humans now? Has your opinion changed since you first arrived?" Ava considered the question carefully. "It has," she admitted. "When I first came here, I was afraid. I'd heard so many stories about human violence, human unpredictability. But now," she paused, gathering her thoughts. "Now I see that humans are so much more complex than I ever imagined. Yes, you're capable of violence and cruelty, but you're also capable of incredible kindness, of love so deep it takes my breath away." Jack listened intently, his food forgotten. "And what about personal connections?" he asked, his voice slightly hesitant. "Has your view on those changed too?" Ava felt her heart begin to race again. "Yes," she said softly. "On Zephyria, we're taught to value logic over emotion, to avoid deep personal attachments. But being here, seeing how humans connect with each other, I'm beginning to think we might be missing out on something profound." Jack reached across the table, taking Ava's hand in his. "Ava," he said, his voice gentle, "I hope this isn't too forward, but I care about you, more than just as a friend or a colleague. These past few weeks without seeing you, I've realized just how much you mean to me." Ava felt a rush of emotion so intense it made her dizzy. Part of her wanted to pull away, to retreat to the safe, logical world she knew. But a stronger part, a part that had been awakening ever since she arrived on Earth, made her tighten her grip on Jack's hand. "I care about you too, Jack," she whispered. "I don't fully understand these feelings, they're so new and intense. But I know that when I'm with you, I feel complete." Jack's smile was radiant. Slowly, giving her plenty of time to pull away if she wanted, he leaned across the table. Ava found herself leaning in too, drawn by a force she couldn't explain. Their lips met in a soft, sweet kiss. For Ava, it was like nothing she had ever experienced. A jolt of electricity seemed to run through her entire body, setting every nerve ending alight. She understood now why humans valued physical affection so much. It was transcendent. As they parted, both slightly breathless, Ava knew that everything had changed. Her mission, her understanding of humanity, her very sense of self, all of it had been irrevocably altered by this connection she had formed. "So," Jack said, a hint of nervousness in his voice, "what happens now?" Ava took a deep breath, centering herself. "I don't know," she admitted. "This is all new territory for me. But I do know that I want to explore it. With you." Jack's smile was answer enough. As they left the cafe, hand in hand, Ava felt a sense of excitement and trepidation about what lay ahead. She had come to Earth to study humans, but in the process, she was discovering new aspects of herself. It was terrifying and exhilarating all at once. Walking through the park, enjoying the warmth of the sun on her skin and the comfort of Jack's hand in hers, Ava realized that her journey was far from over. In fact, in many ways, it was just beginning. The path ahead was uncertain, filled with potential challenges and misunderstandings. How would her superiors on Zephyria react to this development? How would she navigate the complex world of human relationships? And most pressingly, what would happen when her mission on Earth came to an end? But as she looked at Jack, saw the warmth and affection in his eyes, Ava knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. She had come to Earth expecting to find brutality and chaos. Instead, she had found connection, empathy, and love. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in brilliant hues of orange and pink, Ava and Jack found a quiet spot on a hill overlooking the city. Sitting close together, they watched as the first stars began to appear. "You know," Jack said softly, "I used to look up at the stars and wonder if there was anyone out there looking back. I never imagined I'd be sitting here with someone who had actually traveled among them." Ava leaned her head on his shoulder, marveling at how natural it felt. "And I never imagined I'd find someone who could make me feel so at home, so far from my own world. As they sat there, two beings from different worlds finding connection under the vast canopy of stars, Ava felt a profound sense of peace. Whatever the future held, whatever challenges they might face, she knew that this moment, this connection, was something truly special. The universe, it seemed, had far more wonders to offer than either of them had ever dreamed. Crisis and revelation. The weeks following Ava and Jack's stay at the museum were filled with a mixture of joy and uncertainty. Their relationship blossomed, each day bringing new discoveries and deeper connections. Ava found herself experiencing emotions she had never known existed, her logical Zephyrian mind struggling to keep up with the intensity of human feelings. However, as their bond grew stronger, so did the complications. Ava was acutely aware that her time on Earth was limited. Her mission had a set duration, and eventually she would be expected to return to Zephyria with her findings. The thought of leaving Jack, of leaving behind the rich, complex world she had come to love, filled her with a profound sense of loss. One evening, as they sat together in the Johnsons' backyard, watching the fireflies dance in the twilight, Jack broached the subject they had both been avoiding. "Ava," he said softly, his voice tinged with concern, "what happens when your mission ends? We have to leave." Ava felt her heart clench at the question. She had been dreading this conversation, but she knew it was inevitable. I don't know, Jack," she admitted, her voice barely above a whisper. "My duty is to return to Zephyria, to share what I've learned about humanity. But the thought of leaving," she trailed off, unable to put her tumultuous feelings into words. Jack pulled her closer, his warmth a comfort in the cool evening air. "We'll figure it out," he said, though Ava could hear the uncertainty in his voice. "Whatever happens, we'll face it together." As they sat there, holding each other under the stars, neither of them could have predicted the crisis that was about to unfold, a crisis that would test not only their relationship, but the very foundations of human Zephyrian relations. The next morning dawned grey and overcast, matching Ava's somber mood. As she helped Mrs. Johnson prepare breakfast, the kitchen television flickered with breaking news that made both of them freeze in shock. "We interrupt this program with breaking news," the anchor announced, her voice grave. "A Zephyrian ship has crash-landed in the Modhav Desert. Details are still coming in, but early reports suggest there are survivors in need of immediate assistance." Ava felt her world tilt on its axis. A Zephyrian ship, here. It didn't make sense. There weren't supposed to be any other Zephyrian vessels in Earth's vicinity. Before she could process the information, her communication device buzzed urgently. It was a message from Dr. Chen. "Ava, we need you at the crash site immediately. Your expertise could be crucial in this situation. A transport will arrive to pick you up in 30 minutes. The next few hours passed in a blur. Ava found herself on a high-speed transport racing towards the crash site. Her mind was reeling with questions and concerns. Who were these Zephyrians? Why had they come to Earth? And most pressingly, were they all right? As they approached the desert, Ava could see the plume of smoke rising from the crash site. Her heart clenched at the sight. The transport landed amidst a flurry of activity, emergency vehicles, military personnel, and a swarm of media helicopters circling overhead. Dr. Chen met her as she disembarked. "Ava, thank goodness you're here," he said, his face etched with worry. "The situation is complicated. The ship's occupants are alive, but they're refusing to leave the vessel. They say they'll only communicate with another Zephyrian." Ava nodded, steeling herself for what lay ahead. As she approached the crashed ship, she could feel the eyes of the world upon her. This moment, she realized, could shape the future of human Zephyrian relations for generations to come. The ship's hull was cracked and scorched, but the airlock remained intact. Ava took a deep breath, then pressed the communication panel. "This is Ava of Zephyria," she said in her native language. "I'm here to help. Please, let me in." For a moment, there was silence. Then, with a hiss of escaping air, the airlock opened. Ava stepped inside, her heart pounding. The interior of the ship was dim, emergency lights casting an eerie glow. As her eyes adjusted, Ava saw 3 figures huddled in the corner, 2 adults and a child. Their iridescent skin was dull with fear and exhaustion, but their eyes lit up with recognition when they saw Ava. "Thank the stars," one of the adults said, relief evident in their voice. "We feared we were alone here." Ava moved closer, her scientific training kicking in as she assessed their condition. "Are you injured? What happened?" The other adult, who Ava now recognized as the ship's pilot, shook their head. "No serious injuries, but our ship is beyond repair. We're refugees, Ava. There's been a coup on Zephyria. The isolationists have taken control. They're severing all ties with other worlds, including Earth." Ava felt as if the ground had dropped out from beneath her. A coup. Isolationists in control. It seemed impossible, yet the evidence was right before her eyes. "We couldn't stay," the first adult continued, cradling the child close. "We believe in connection, in learning from other species. We couldn't bear the thought of our child growing up in a closed, fearful society, so we fled." Ava's mind was reeling, but she forced herself to focus on the immediate situation. "You're safe now," she assured them, "but we need to get you out of this ship. There are humans outside who want to help, but they're nervous. They've never encountered Zephyrians other than me." The refugees exchanged worried glances. "Can we trust them?" the pilot asked. Ava nodded firmly. "Yes, you can. I've lived among humans for months now. They are complex beings, capable of great kindness and compassion. They will help you, I promise." Slowly, cautiously, the Zephyrian refugees agreed to leave the ship. As Ava led them out into the harsh desert sunlight, she saw the assembled humans tense up. But then, to her amazement and pride, she watched as their expressions shifted from fear to concern and then to determination. Emergency medical teams rushed forward, offering blankets and water. Translators stepped up, ready to facilitate communication. And there, pushing through the crowd, was Jack, his face a mixture of relief and love as he spotted Ava. As the refugees were led away to a makeshift medical tent, Ava found herself enveloped in Jack's embrace. "I came as soon as I heard," he murmured into her hair. "Are you okay?" Ava clung to him, suddenly overwhelmed by the enormity of what had just happened. "I'm all right," she said, her voice shaky. "But Jack, everything's changed. Zephyria, my home, it's not what I thought it was." Over the next few hours, as the sun climbed high in the desert sky, Ava worked tirelessly to bridge the gap between the Zephyrian refugees and the human authorities. She translated, explained cultural differences, and reassured both sides. Through it all, Jack remained by her side, offering support and demonstrating to the newcomers that humans and Zephyrians could indeed form deep bonds. As the day wore on, Ava found herself in a meeting with Dr. Chen, high-ranking military officials, and representatives from the United Nations. The fate of the Zephyrian refugees, and potentially the future of human-Zephyrian relations, hung in the balance. "Miss Ava," one of the UN representatives said, her voice kind but firm, "you understand that this situation presents both an opportunity and a challenge for Earth. We want to help, but we also need to consider the safety and interests of our own people." Ava nodded, feeling the weight of responsibility on her shoulders. "I understand," she said, "but I can assure you, these refugees pose no threat to Earth. They are scientists, explorers, people who believe in the importance of intergalactic cooperation, just as I do." She paused, gathering her thoughts before continuing. "What's happened on Zephyria is a tragedy, not just for my people but for the entire galaxy. It represents a step backward, a retreat into fear and isolation. But here now, we have an opportunity to show that there's another way. That different species can not only coexist but thrive together." The room fell silent as Ava's words sank in. She could see the humans exchanging glances, some skeptical, others thoughtful. Finally, Dr. Chen spoke up. I've worked with Ava for months, he said, his voice firm. I've seen firsthand her dedication to fostering understanding between our species. If she vouches for these refugees, I believe we should trust her judgment. Slowly, heads began to nod around the room. The UN representative smiled. Very well, she said. We'll grant the refugees temporary asylum while we work out a more permanent solution. And Miss Ava, we'd like you to act as their liaison and cultural advisor if you're willing. Ava felt a surge of relief and gratitude. Of course, she said. I'd be honored. As the meeting adjourned, Ava stepped out into the cool evening air, her mind whirling with the day's events. She found Jack waiting for her, his face etched with concern. How did it go? He asked. Ava managed a small smile. They're granting asylum. It's a start. Jack pulled her into a hug, and Ava let herself sink into his embrace. For a moment, they stood there in silence, the desert wind whispering around them. Jack, Ava said finally, her voice muffled against his chest. I can't go back to Zephyria. Not now, maybe not ever. My people, they're not who I thought they were. And I'm not who I was when I first came here. Jack pulled back slightly, looking into her eyes. What are you saying, Ava? She took a deep breath, her heart's pounding. I'm saying, I want to stay, here on Earth, with you, if you'll have me. Jack's face broke into a radiant smile. Ava, he said, his voice thick with emotion, nothing would make me happier. As they kissed, the first stars beginning to twinkle in the darkening sky, Ava felt a sense of peace wash over her. The road ahead would not be easy. There would be challenges to face, prejudices to overcome, a new life to build, but she was ready for it all. She had come to Earth expecting to find brutality and chaos. Instead, she had found love, compassion, and a place to call home. As she looked up at the stars, the same stars that shone over Zephyria, Ava knew that her greatest adventure was just beginning. New beginnings. The months following the crash landing of the Zephyrian refugees brought about a whirlwind of changes, not just for Ava and Jack, but for the entire world. The presence of the Zephyrian refugees on Earth had sparked a global conversation about extraterrestrial relations, challenging humanity to confront its place in the wider universe. Ava found herself at the center of it all, serving as a bridge between two worlds. Her days were filled with meetings, interviews, and endless rounds of cultural exchange. She worked tirelessly to help the refugees adjust to life on Earth, while also educating humans about Zephyrian culture and biology. One crisp autumn morning, Ava stood before a United Nations assembly, her iridescent skin shimmering under the bright lights. She had been invited to give a speech about the importance of intergalactic cooperation and understanding. Distinguished delegates, she began, her voice clear and strong. I stand before you today, not just as a Zephyrian, but as a citizen of the galaxy. When I first came to Earth, I was afraid. I had been told that humans were brutal, unpredictable creatures. But what I found here was something far more complex and beautiful than I could have ever imagined. She paused, her gaze sweeping across the room. I found a species capable of great kindness and compassion, of boundless creativity and resilience. Yes, humanity has its flaws, its conflicts, its darker impulses. But you also have an extraordinary capacity for growth, for learning, for becoming better than you were yesterday. As she spoke, Ava could see the impact of her words on the assembled delegates. Some nodded in agreement, others looked thoughtful, and a few even had tears in their eyes. The refugees from Zephyria are not so different from the refugees that have sought sanctuary on Earth throughout your history, Ava continued. They are scientists, artists, dreamers, individuals who believe in a future where different species can learn from each other, grow together, and build a better galaxy for all. She took a deep breath before delivering her final words. The choice before us now is clear. We can retreat into fear and isolation, as the current regime on Zephyria has done, or we can embrace the unknown, reach out to one another across the vast distances of space, and forge a new future together. I, for one, choose connection. I choose understanding. I choose hope. As Ava stepped down from the podium, the assembly hall erupted in applause. She felt a surge of emotion, pride, hope, and a deep sense of belonging. This world, so different from the one she had left behind, had become her home. Outside the UN building, Jack was waiting for her, his face beaming with pride. "That was incredible, Ava," he said, pulling her into a warm embrace. "You're changing the world, you know that." Ava laughed softly, leaning into his embrace. "We're changing the world, Jack. All of us together." As they walked hand in hand through the streets of New York, Ava marveled at how far she had come. The city that had once seemed so alien and overwhelming to her now felt familiar, almost comfortable. She could name the different types of trees lining the streets, understood the unspoken rules of navigating crowded sidewalks, and even had a favorite coffee shop, even though she couldn't drink coffee herself. "So, what's next on the agenda, world changer?" Jack asked playfully as they stopped to admire the view of the city's skyline. Ava's expression turned serious. "Actually, I've been thinking about that. The refugee resettlement program is going well, but there's still so much to do. And then there's the question of what to do about Zephyria." Jack squeezed her hand reassuringly. "Whatever it is, we'll face it together. You know that, right?" Ava nodded, feeling a warmth spread through her at his words. "I do. And that's why I think it's time we took the next step." Jack raised an eyebrow, curious. "What do you mean?" Ava took a deep breath, her heart's racing. "Jack, on Zephyria, we don't have the concept of marriage as you do on Earth. But I've learned about it, and I think I understand why it's so important to humans. It's about commitment, about choosing to face the future together, no matter what it brings." She turned to face him fully, taking both his hands in hers. "So, Jack Thompson, will you marry me? Will you be my partner, not just in love, but in all the challenges and adventures that lie ahead?" For a moment, Jack stood speechless, his eyes wide with surprise and joy. Then, with a laugh that was half sob, he pulled Ava into a fierce embrace. "Yes," he whispered against her hair. 1,000 times yes. Their wedding, held 6 months later, was unlike any the world had ever seen. It was a celebration not just of their love, but of the new era of human-Zephyrian relations. The ceremony blended traditions from both cultures, with Ava wearing a shimmering gown that mimicked the bioluminescent patterns of her homeworld, while Jack wore a classic Earth tuxedo with subtle Zephyrian design elements. The guest list was a who's who of both human and Zephyrian society. The Johnsons, who had become like a second family to Ava, sat in the front row, tears of joy in their eyes. Dr. Chen beamed proudly from his seat, looking every bit the proud mentor. And the Zephyrian refugees, now well on their way to building new lives on Earth, added their unique glow to the proceedings. As Ava and Jack exchanged their vows, promising to stand by each other through whatever the universe might throw their way, there wasn't a dry eye in the house. It was more than just a wedding. It was a symbol of hope, a testament to the power of love to bridge even the vast gulfs between the stars. The years that followed brought both challenges and triumphs. Ava and Jack worked tirelessly to promote intergalactic understanding, setting up cultural exchange programs and scientific collaborations between Earth and other worlds. They faced opposition from those on both sides who feared change, but they never lost sight of their vision for a more connected, compassionate galaxy. 5 years after their wedding, Ava made a groundbreaking announcement that sent ripples throughout the scientific community. After years of research and careful genetic engineering, she and a team of human and Zephyrian scientists had developed a way for humans and Zephyrians to have biological children together. The news was met with a mix of excitement and controversy. Some hailed it as the next step in intergalactic relations, while others worried about the ethical implications. But for Ava and Jack, it was deeply personal. On a warm spring day, in a hospital room filled with a mix of human and Zephyrian medical equipment, Ava gave birth to their daughter. The child was a perfect blend of both species, iridescent skin that shimmered with subtle human skin tones, eyes that were unmistakably Jack's but with a larger, more expressive quality of Zephyrian eyes. As they held their daughter for the first time, marveling at the miracle they had created, Ava and Jack knew that they were witnessing the dawn of a new era. Their child was living proof that the gaps between species could be bridged, that love truly could conquer all barriers. They named her Aurora, after the Earth phenomenon of the Northern Lights, a beautiful fusion of terrestrial and celestial wonder, much like the child herself. As Aurora grew, so too did the bonds between Earth and the wider galactic community. The isolationist regime on Zephyria eventually fell, replaced by a government more open to intergalactic cooperation. Ava was there for the historic moment when Zephyria and Earth established formal diplomatic relations, her daughter on her hip and her husband by her side. Looking back on her journey, Ava could hardly believe how far she had come. She had arrived on Earth terrified of its inhabitants, certain of her own superiority. Now, she called this planet home, had a family that straddled two worlds, and was helping to shape the future of intergalactic relations. One evening, as Ava and Jack sat on the porch of their home, watching Aurora play in the yard, Ava felt a profound sense of peace wash over her. The sky above was turning a deep purple, reminding her of Zephyrian sunsets, while the fireflies beginning to emerge were purely Earth magic. "Do you ever regret it?" Jack asked softly, squeezing her hand. "Staying here, I mean, giving up your life on Zephyria?" Ava shook her head, a smile playing on her lips. "Never," she said firmly. "I came here looking for understanding, and I found so much more. I found a home, a family, a purpose. I found love." She looked out at Aurora, her heart swelling with pride and hope. Their daughter was the future, not just theirs, but the galaxy's. A future where differences were celebrated, where fear was replaced by curiosity, where love knew no boundaries. Besides, Ava added with a chuckle, "Who says my life on Zephyria is over? It's a big galaxy, Jack. Our story is just beginning." As the first stars began to twinkle in the darkening sky, Ava leaned her head on Jack's shoulder, content in the knowledge that whatever adventures lay ahead, they would face them together. She had come to Earth expecting to find brutality, but instead, she had found humanity in all its complex, beautiful, flawed glory. And in doing so, she had discovered the best of herself. The universe, Ava knew, was full of wonders, but the greatest wonder of all was the capacity for connection, for love, for growth. As she sat there, surrounded by the family she had never dreamed she'd have, on a world she had once feared, Ava knew that she was exactly where she was meant to be. And somewhere out there, among the countless stars, new adventures were waiting to be born.